Hey everyone, it's Friday. That means it's time to deploy. I'm your host, John Bristowe. Joining me is Jim Pelletier. Jim, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, good. Just got back from chasing the dog down the street. He got out the backyard just before, so if I'm out of breath, give me forgive me.
I thought you were doing one of those things that we do in the industry, which is we use a metaphor. There's
Yeah,
rubber
no,
duck
no.
debugging. There's yak shaving.
Literally
Chasing the
chasing the
dog down the
dog.
street. I was like, I haven't heard this
Yeah,
one. So what's this all about?
yeah. How are you?
Anyway, good, good. Very busy week, and I'll talk about some of the things that I've done this week. But yeah, we've had a really productive week. Still coming down off the high from shipped last week, which was
Yeah,
great. I'm in the midst right now of cutting up a lot of videos, so we're hoping to have like a highlights package that we can kind of put out on social. If you don't have the time to watch the full 5.5 hours of content that we published, we're really, really close to publishing sort of like an appetizer pack, if you will, of clips that we've taken out. So I've got about 30 or so coming. So there you go.
that sounds great.
Yeah. How are things on the developer side of things?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
land of robust deployments.
It's been really interesting. I think all the work that we've been doing to sort of improve the reliability of Octopus when it's operating in different environments and challenging environments is sort of all out the door and done now. We're really ramping up, those new efforts that we're doing to sort of scale things up to more nodes, do more concurrent deployments, handle maintenance to the servers and that kind of thing. So yeah, really interesting stuff going on.
That's awesome. There's like lots of talk about, the stuff that we're doing, which is great. I think people are really appreciating the fact that we're doing a lot of work in this space. So
Yeah,
I'm deeply encouraged by a lot of stuff that we're doing, and yeah, I think that you're definitely part of that, which is great. And yeah, definitely a lot of stuff to talk about relative to that. So without any further
yeah.
ado, let's go ahead and get into some of the news of the week. To do that, I will go ahead and share my screen. And as I always say, through the magic and power of software, there we go. All right, so for those who don't know, we recently shipped 2023.4 of Octopus, and this is the What's New page. And I thought you and I could just go quickly through it and highlight some of the things that we've shipped. So there's about six or so key features that we've added to Octopus 2023.4, and let's just go through them one by one. So first and foremost, this one's really exciting to me, which is support for OIDC, or Open ID Connect. This is basically being able to allow systems to connect with one another in a secure manner. And so OpenID Connect is basically a way that we're leveraging, Octopus to connect to different systems, namely things like GitHub. So this is actually serving as the basis or foundation for integration within GitHub for a GitHub app. We're actively building this, and this is the first step is to have OIDC support. So this is something that you can now do. You can establish a connection, more or less, a secure connection, more or less, through two different instances, namely GitHub and Octopus, for example. We also cite Azure here. But the idea here is that once you establish that, you base it off of URLs, that sort of conversation of secure connection is transparent. You don't have to worry about it any longer. So that's the basis of OIDC, and this is something that is really, really nice. Now, traditionally, what you would have to do is do this through an API key. So you'd have to establish an API key, use that everywhere, and then, God forbid, if it got leaked, you'd have to, revoke it, re-update, etc. What OIDC does is it allows you to establish the connections through, domains, DNS addresses, etc. So it turns out to be a lot more elegant in that way because you can say, look, I implicitly trust these domains, and please allow me to authenticate to it. So really nice stuff. This one, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second, source scripts from Git. This is really useful if you're running a deployment step, which is like a run a script step, or it's a derivative thereof. Now what you can do is you can actually point to Git, and you can say, go find my script over there based off of this SHA hash, and that will be the script basis for my script step. So that's a really nice feature, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. This one we've talked about heaps. Ian is the PM for this team that owns this. Basically, inside of the UI now, you can connect multiple tenants to multiple projects. And it turns out to be really, really nice because rather than having to go back and forth, like this tenant to this project, this tenant to this project, it turned out to be a lot of clicks, and it was just wearing people's wrist out having to hold the mouse, and click, check, check, check. So now what you can do is you can just go right down a list and select all and say, these ones are all connected, which is great.
That's not shouldn't be the hardest part of deployments, that should it?
No. Yeah, if we can't get the configs right, we've got a problem. So it's like, do your job, stay in your lane, just focus on deployments. So this one, Ships has been talking a lot about resilient technical communications to reduce deployment failures. So this is at the protocol level where you have sort of flaky connections, where you have high latency networks occurring. So there's lots of stuff to go into that, and so we've improved the protocol there, which is great. And then finally, and again, this is something that Ian's been talking about, is reprioritizing of tasks in Octopus for simpler management of task queues. So when you kick off a multiple deployments, you want to have a queue of these running, and you get actually a server ID, which is a task ID when you kick off a deployment. You never see it, but you do if you actually are using the CLI. That's something we added support for. So you can pull the status of the task ID if you want, but basically what this allows you to do is you can reorder the priority of those. So this is for items where, maybe you have a high priority deployment and you want to elevate its priority. Like, so let's say you've got like 100 tasks and you're like, oh, we got to get this out. So you can just drag and drop it all the way to the top if you want, which is pretty nice. Does this have an impact on you guys at all?
It was interesting. We had to work with the team implementing this to basically make sure it could scale. It works today when you're running an Octopus server, but we want it to work well into the future when you're doing thousands of deployments at a time. So there's a few UI concerns with that, there's a few queuing concerns with that. So yeah.
Nice. Another feature which isn't listed in that list, but it is on our What's New page, it's in a bullet list, is this one. Space IDs for for Terraform resources. So I sheepishly will take the blame for this one because I worked a long time on the Terraform provider. So for the longest time, whenever using the Octopus Deploy Terraform provider, we had to tell people, like, in order to support multiple spaces through the Terraform provider, you have to set up two or more instances of the provider configs. So you can see that in this config, this is called HCL, or HashiCorp configuration language, just a text format. This is what you throw at Terraform to say, set yourself up. When you configure the provider, you have to give it a set of config values. It has to know where is it going to go to talk to Octopus, what API key, et cetera, et cetera. Now, historically, what we've said is you have to also bind that to a space. Now, that created some problems for people who want to use consistent resources across spaces. And you'll see in a second why that is. But typically what you'd have to do is you'd have to use these two configs and then list the provider that each and every resource you're managing is going to use. And that became really frustrating because you'd have to basically sprinkle these provider definitions all over your resources. Not ideal. So now what we've done is we've actually elevated or hoisted the notion of the space ID at the resource level. So you'll notice here we can still configure the provider saying, okay, provider, by default, hit spaces 1. That's the ID you're hitting. So when I do an operation like this, it's going to say, all right, I'm going to do this against spaces 1 because that's the implied context with that provider. However, if I so choose, I can now specify the space ID directly inside of here. And so what that does now is it will allow me to perform that action. So if you did this historically before, what would happen is the Terraform provider would return an error because actually it wasn't the Terraform provider, it was the API. The API would return an error because you were doing this through that API key and that space ID. So what this allows you to do now is basically denote these values on each resource, which is kind of nice.
Awesome.
Another change that's coming, and I'm going to be talking to Mark about this, is there's a couple new step templates that have been built. So Azure Application Configuration is a feature or service from Azure that allows you to store app configs. So key value pairs, things of that nature, kind of like Vault from HashiCorp or other types of secure locations where you can persist application and other sensitive values in some secure location, then pull them down on the fly. So we've added support for not only pulling those values down through a new step template, which is this one here, the Azure App Config Key KV retrieve values, but also persist values back now. So step templates are an extensibility mechanism within Octopus. You can now you can now use these ones. I believe this one is now merged. Yeah, so it should be a part of the library now. So that should show up pretty soon. And yeah, this is great. Mark's going to write a blog post about this. We're going to do a video about this as well with a demo. But basically, the idea is that now you're going to see something that looks like this inside of the app config. Sorry, inside of the step template. This is basically the config step. So if you're in a deployment process or run book, you'll have this. If you've installed the step template, you'll see this, and you're using this to retrieve values. This is what it will look like. So you can retrieve certain keys. You can do wildcards. There's all kinds of things you can do, which is kind of nice. So new step templates.
That paired up with the OIDC changes should make things super easy, right?
Yes, it should. So all goodness, lots of goodness coming down the pipe, which I like. I like it a lot. This is a video that is from our friends over at SSW, Superior Software for Windows. They're a consultancy out of Australia. And this is a video featuring Alex, who's a member of our team. And she was doing this presentation entitled Evolving Your Codebase at Scale. So this is the story about how that started off like a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air sort of thing. This is the story. So this is a story about how we at Octopus are attempting to do what she's describing here, which is basically we've got some challenges to overcome relative to the performance and scalability of our solution. But at the same time, we can't just go off and break stuff. So we can't just set fire to the entire code base and be like, oh, well, there you go, sort of thing. So Alex has done this really cool talk to folks at SSW Melbourne, and she's told the story about, what we're doing relative to Octopus, how are we taking into account performance and scalability, and what are the tips and tricks and lessons we've learned along the way. So this is a video now up on YouTube you can check out, and I think it's great because it tells a war story, like an engineering story. I love these stories, as you know. And so if you want to check this out, it's up on YouTube. Just search for Octopus Deploy SSW, and just search by the latest one. There's Alex. Alex is cool, and she's really, really smart. We had her on Shipped, so that was great. She tells a great story about, working with a very large code base, as you and I know, and trying to get it to scale is not always easy. And we had folks like Paul Grady talk about this during Shipped as well. So lots of really cool things, and we're trying to do our best relative to that. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
another video that we did recently.
Stories, aren't they?
Yeah, I know, right? They're always, tell me the war stories. The war stories are what I care about. So speaking of war stories, this is Scott and Kit, who I interviewed. They're part of the team here, and they were Kit's a PM and Scott's one of the engineer who are working on the source scripts from Git feature that we've just added to 2023.4. So in this video, Scott shows us a demonstration of what this looks like. So there you can see inside the deployment process. I'll just back it up. So you can see right there in the deployment process what it looks like now. So so I'll go full screen here. There we go. So you can see here we've got the source script listed at the top. So you can now specify Git repository. And then when you go further down in the configs, which I will do here, just drive this a little bit forward. There we go. So you can specify the branch, you can specify the location. You also can specify where that is in the repository itself, so the file path inside the repo that you want to pull down from. And if you go further down, you can see there's also things like script parameters, and then you can bind that value into a variable if you wanted. So there's lots of stuff you can do with it, which is awesome. So there you go. So all goodness. So that's a video up on YouTube. That's on our channel, which is entitled Octopus 2023.4 Source Scripts in Git. So that's a new feature, and that was posted yesterday. So if you want to see what the features are like, we try to do our best to post a video about it. And then wrapping up, this was something that I actually didn't catch. This was last month in October. This was the 2023 Platform Engineering Survey. This was done by the folks over at Humanitech. They run the site platformengineering.org. I'm a huge fan of this site. Platform engineering is something that a lot of folks are talking to us about. It's sort of like the new hotness, if you will. Maybe some people are looking at the evolution of DevOps, etc. But this is a survey that they conducted, and they asked a bunch of questions. This is similar to all the other types of surveys you may have seen elsewhere. Stack Overflow survey, the Octoverse from GitHub, all kinds of surveys like that. So yeah, lots of interesting observations. So they asked over 200 platform engineering practitioners a bunch of questions, things like salary, use of AI, experience, yada, yada, yada. What's your job title? So interestingly, some people are using AI a lot. Some people are using it a little bit. The majority are using it, so that makes sense. Salary ranges. So there you go. Platform engineering seems to get a big boost in the US. You know, they really pay their engineers well in the US as opposed to other parts of the world, but there you go. So if you're in the DevOps space, you're looking for a pay grade jump, maybe put platform engineering on your resume there. Main area of focus. So this is where it gets kind of interesting. So Docker, Kubernetes at 37%. Infrastructure as code, Terraform, Pulumi, Ansible, etc. at 42. CI/CD, this is our bread and butter, 40%. So we're number two, but close number two. Database and storage, networking, yeah, that's for other folks, I guess. So average years of work experience, 17. Platform engineering is a new term. It's only been around for like a year, maybe two. And people have 17 years of work experience, I guess, in platform engineering. I'm kidding, of course. That's just work experience overall.
Well, it does show that the US people who are getting paid more have more experience. They
Okay,
weren't doing
fair.
platform engineering in Europe for 6 years while the
That's
US
right.
were doing it.
That's right. So yeah, lots of interesting questions that are asked. So just another survey. I thought it'd be interesting just to kind of take a look at this, see where we are. Of course, there's always this sort of hype cycle stuff that's always fun. Just see if I can bring in a bigger version of this. So there we are. There's the hype cycle. So software engineering. So platform engineering is right there. I can't zoom in any more than that. So there you go. And last year was just over here. So we're making some progress, I guess. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Anyways, so that's the week that was. Lots of great stuff. Jim, I'm always encouraged by the work that you guys are doing. So bring more of it, please. I want to hear more stories from the trenches. But
100%.
Yeah, it's been a great week. Awesome. All right, so if you have stumbled upon this video and happen to see a resource that you happen to like, just feel free to send us a comment. Otherwise, feel free to like and subscribe to this video. And in the meantime, we hope you have a great week next week. We'll see you next week here on Deploy on Friday. Take care.